Hi guys, my name is Katie Moreno and I am the founder of OrganizedAdvisor.com. And in this session, I'm going to talk to you about yearbook marketing. We spend so much time making a beautiful yearbook and making sure that our stories are well told and our pictures are great compositionally and our design is great and our cover is so cool. And we can't forget to actually sell it. So none of that matters if no one buys your book. And there are a lot of ideas that a bunch of creative advisors have come up with and done throughout the years. And so I'm going to talk to you about the kind of stuff that everyone does that you should do just kind of on repeat just to get your name out there, and then some really creative ideas that you're welcome to borrow. So to get started, if you attended my roadmap session, you'll recognize these first two slides, but this is basically like a checklist of all the like regular, traditional, normal stuff that everyone does. And so obviously you're going to be promoting things before school starts, like at registration days or the first day of school flyer is huge, even if it's digital, including some sort of flyer about buying a yearbook or a senior tribute is really important because you have a captive audience on that first day of school. Or if there's like a back to school event where people come and get their schedules and their textbooks, that's a really popular opportunity as well to sell yearbooks, either with like a table directly right there or just passing out flyers, or even just at least a banner. Getting your message out there is really, really important. And then events also like open house, and then yard signs in front of the school. Make sure that you do put them up, but you take them down periodically. So what happens is they kind of like run into the landscape and they like blend in, and so they don't catch attention anymore because people that are dropping their kid off every day, they see it every day. It doesn't catch their attention because they're just used to seeing it. And so if you're using yard signs, you want to make sure that you like put them up at the beginning of the year, first few weeks, take them down couple weeks later, put them back up, and make sure that it's a fresh, application of it, because otherwise it just blends in. And then obviously you probably have a front marquee in the front of your school, and you can talk to the office about getting a message up there about your yearbook sales. And then something that is a little bit more unique is actually contacting the stadium staff and having them run an ad. We have some example pictures of this later in the show. But that's a really good thing that you can maybe do it even at the district level, so that benefits all the schools in your district. And then, we have the digital marketing and the traditional print marketing. And so we have the e-marketing is really great if you are able to send out an e-blast to your student body and you're tracking coverage. You can target specific things with your e-marketing. So you can track people who have been in the book and haven't purchased, or people who have purchased and aren't in the book yet. Like, you can track all those things through e-marketing and target them with a specific message. You can obviously do social media. I'm going to talk a lot about social media in a second. And then little things like your email signature, making sure there's a link to the yearbook site there. The school website should obviously have advertisements for how to buy a yearbook. And then you're going to obviously do the print stuff, like the mailers sent home, the flyers above the water fountain. That print section is really where students tend to focus first, because they're used to seeing flyers and posters and making them, painting them. And so that's pretty well taken care of. And we really want to push our staffs to be more creative in their marketing, lean into digital, and also do things that are outside the box that aren't just painting flyers. Because like I said, with the yard signs, it kind of blends into the landscape. And if there's 50 flyers above the water fountain or on a bulletin board, you're not going to really notice the one about yearbook, right? And then you also want to market about your senior tributes or your senior ads in particular. Like, that doesn't just need to be thrown in on your yearbook ad. Market to the seniors specifically. So talk to them at senior class, in their senior classes, or on like a senior night where they're maybe getting a bunch of information about graduation, stuff like that. And then also talk to your administration and see if it's possible to do like a senior package with their yearbook and their ad and their senior t-shirt and their prom ticket, their homecoming ticket, their cap and gown, all of it. Because a lot of times maybe a student who wouldn't have bought a yearbook actually will, because it's just bundled into the package and it's easier to just do it all one time. And then they usually can make payments on it, so it doesn't hit all at one time either. And then also make sure that you're talking to your portrait studio if you have one that is taking your senior portraits, and make sure that they have flyers or information for your students, because they typically come with their parents too to their portrait session, and you have a captive audience right there where they're wanting to commemorate this moment. If they're taking a senior picture, they're probably expecting it and wanting it to be in the yearbook, and so you can like get two birds with one stone right there and get their attention. And then, like I said, this is in the other show, so I'm just going to go over it quickly. But obviously, with your coverage report, you want to be tracking people who are purchasing the book and versus and comparing that to your coverage. And so you want to be keeping track of the students that you have in your book, not only for the index, but also to make sure that you're not covering anybody too much, but also to make sure that your people who have purchased the book are actually in it. I think that that is one of the easiest ways to make someone mad is if they get the yearbook at the end of the year and they're not in it, whether it's their fault because it's a privacy list issue and they said they don't want to be published, or it's a just a a coverage issue that they just maybe aren't in very much and we didn't seek them out, and so they spent money on a book and now they're not in it except for their portrait. We want them to be they're our target audience, right? The purchasers. So we want to make sure that they are covered. And then with that same list, though, you can also target the non-buyers. So you don't want to send the same message just to everybody. You want to target it and say, hey, we noticed you haven't bought your yearbook yet. And if you have more data on the students and their contact info, you can make it very specific. Like, hey, the band page is looking really great in the yearbook, and you can target them because you know that they're in band. And then also people who have been in the book and have not purchased, you can also use that same list that you're tracking, and you can send them a little note or a sticky note or a card or something that says, hey, you're in the yearbook on page 57, and we just noticed that you haven't bought a yearbook. Here's a link just in case you didn't know. They're on sale for another couple of weeks, or we have this many left, to give them that sense of urgency, like, oh, I'm in it, and they might want to see it ahead of time and stuff and be like, oh, sorry, you can't, like you want them to have a reason to buy that book. And then another good idea, and there's another picture of this too later in the show, is sending thank you gifts, like a little tiny, like a candy, like during Halloween or Valentine's Day, that just says like, here's a sweet treat for right now and a yearbook in the spring, to encourage more sales, because when those get delivered in class, then the people next to them are like, what, I want candy. And you're like, well, go buy your yearbook. And then the second round, when you do it, like at Valentine's Day, it can be, then they'll get one too. So, and then you want to target your seniors in particular, not just for senior tributes. Obviously, that is important, but also the parents who haven't purchased yet. Just give them a call if you can. You can have the students do like a phone tree. If sometimes parents, especially if seniors, are just really busy and they don't mean to not buy it, but inevitably at the end of every year there's always a senior who's like freaking out and their parents hysterical and they're like, I totally forgot, I'm so sorry. And you're going to be sold out, and so you may want to make sure you've done everything you possibly can to make sure that, like, if they want a yearbook, that they got one. And then also, this is a really big one, is double checking, and this isn't so much promotion as it is double checking to save yourself a headache later, but also to promote and just get in contact with people. But you want to call the parents of the seniors in particular. You can call everyone, but the seniors in particular who are on the privacy list. So if your district or your school has a list of students, usually on the first day or like that registration form, they have a little box and it talks about publishing their students' likeness or their photo. And a lot of parents just say, no, I want it to be private, not realizing that that also counts for the yearbook. Like maybe they don't want their kid on social media, but they don't mind them being in the yearbook. And so you want to make sure that if they selected that they want to be private, that they actually know that that also has to do with yearbook too. A lot of times they do it inadvertently and they don't realize it. But sometimes it is important for like custody issues. And so keeping them private is important. But you just want to double check that if they know that especially if they've taken a senior picture, they're probably expecting us to be in the book. So you definitely want to reach out to those parents and those students. And if you can't get a hold of the parents for some reason, at least go to the student and have them sign off on acknowledging that they know that their privacy code is this and they won't be in the yearbook, just so later down the line, especially if they bought one, their parents aren't like, why wasn't my kid in the yearbook? And you're like, well, this is actually your fault. So the more contact you can have with them before the headaches start, the better. And then obviously you want to submit your final count by the deadline based on how many you've sold. So you really want to push it hard and market it before that final count, so you have a good idea of how many you'll need to buy. And then you also maybe want to add a couple of extras to sell at the end of the year. You're probably going to get a few overruns too, but you can kind of gauge based on past sales in the community how many you need to purchase. And then you want to review your budget and make sure you're still like good to go. And then create a waiting list. So if people haven't purchased by then you can create a waiting list, or it can just be first come first serve at the end of the year. So I like to go over this really quick because, especially for new advisors, you might not even know where to start. And so this gives you a good checklist to kind of get going. But like I said, this is kind of like the basics that you would just do. And what I would encourage you to do is map out a calendar throughout the whole year and run your marketing in campaigns. And so you might do, thank you notes or thank you like gifts like candy in Halloween time, like end of October and Valentine's Day. And then you might do the sticky notes to students who haven't purchased at the end of every single month or the end of every week, maybe. And then you would send reminders to non-buyers like once a month. And that's like the first week of the month or something. And then you're going to call your parents of seniors who haven't purchased like maybe in December, and then last minute in January after the winter break, maybe even before December because holiday season is expensive. And so you want to map out a calendar because what that'll do is one, you've written it down, so it gives you some accountability, and it also gives your students like a task to cross off. And so when you plan it like that, you're more likely to make it happen versus just kind of sort of winging it and making decisions on the fly and being like, we should probably make a poster. Like it's probably not going to happen then. And so if you plan it out and you add it to your like planner, your calendar, and you add it to your students' to-do list, like it's more likely to happen. And there's a lot of ideas on here. And really, you should do as many as you possibly can. Traditional marketing and sales says that someone, in order to make a purchasing decision, needs to have been brought up, and they call it a touch, 7 times before they make that purchasing decision. So they might see your yard sign in the front of the school, and then they're going to see your marquee up on the screen, and then they're going to see at the sports game on Friday, like at the stadium, that sign, and then they're going to go in the front office and see a big banner you have there and the yearbook on the counter, and then they're going to go to lunch and see a banner in the cafeteria, and they've been touched 5 times, and then they're going to go on social media and be like, oh my gosh, this yearbook is everywhere, and it's top of mind. And so when they see an email come through that like last chance to buy your yearbook, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to get a yearbook. It's so important because they've been like bombarded but subtly with this information all year long. And also, I mean, you guys see it every day, like our phones are tracking us and stuff, and we'll talk about things and then you'll get an ad for it. Like that's a touch. Like the marketers want you to have the product in front of your face. Also, another thing about like traditional marketing versus current marketing is before, maybe a couple of years ago or a couple of decades ago even, it was like a big secret to like keep the yearbook cover, like you're going to reveal it at the end of the year. It's really exciting. I would say as soon as you get a mock-up of it, reveal it. Like make it a big deal. Do some hype leading up to like the launch of it being released and that sort of thing. But don't wait until the end of the year. People don't buy things that they don't see. Like we don't buy phones that we don't know what it looks like. We want to know what we're buying. We want to look at reviews. We want to see people get excited about it. If our friends are buying, if our friends are buying it, we're more likely to buy it. And so that is the energy that you want to build on your campus. So, those are all out of order. Okay, so I really recommend starting a social media account for your program. This all goes back to marketing, but more so it's about building a culture on your campus that is accepting and excited about journalism and about your journalism program and about your yearbook and about what you're providing to the school. If you are having trouble selling yearbooks, it's probably not just that they don't have the money, it's that they don't value it. If you are having trouble selling yearbooks, look at your kids' feet. They are wearing Nike shoes or they're wearing Yeezys. They're carrying around iPhones. They have AirPods in their ear. They're wearing Adidas hoodies that cost $75 or something crazy. It's not a decision about money. It's a decision about what they want to spend their money on. And obviously, if you have the choice of AirPods or a yearbook, like AirPods are going to win every time, but if they feel like it's valuable to them, then they will want it and their parents will buy it. And you can do, if it is a money issue, you can break things down into different payment plans and that sort of thing if that's helpful. But at the end of the day, it's typically not about money, even though it feels like that's a really like valid excuse. It's more so a cultural issue. And so you have to build an environment at your school that values the work that you're doing in the yearbook. And so one of the best ways I think to do that is starting with social media and providing value to your audience first. And so what that does is it establishes you as your program, not you as the advisor, but your program as the go-to news source on campus. And so you are where people go for information, and they trust you, and they see that you're producing good content. They see that you're reliable for news. And then they're going to be like, oh, well, of course I buy the yearbook. Like I trust them. I know them. I love their content. If that's what they're going to do in the yearbook versus, in comparison to the content they put on social media, there's already a level of trust there. And people buy from other people that they know, like, and trust. And if you don't say anything all year long and then you're like, hey, buy a yearbook, they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're doing. They haven't seen you produce anything. They don't know what the cover looks like. They don't know if it's any good. They don't know why it's $80 or whatever. And so they don't have any information. They don't know you. They don't like you because they don't know you. And then they don't trust you because they don't know you. And so you have to put yourself and your program out there. And one of the best ways to do that is posting on social media, because that's where people are, but also posting everything but sales messages, like giving them information that they need. So kind of mimicking either a newsletter that goes out periodically to the parents and or the morning announcements, any sort of news or updates or events or schedules or like sports scores, anything that you can post on social media on a regular basis, like as often as you possibly can, will establish yourself as the news source. And so what that does is, instead of waiting to receive an email from the district about a weather delay when the weather's really bad in the morning, maybe school's closed, it's a snow day, instead of going to the local news, they're going to go check your page, because they know that you're going to post it as soon as their information is out there. And that can be difficult because, we don't always have information faster than the news does and that sort of stuff. But the idea and the sentiment is that you want to be where they go for this information, because they trust you and they know that it's hyper local to your campus versus the district or the city or anything like that. And so you're also providing that information that's like necessities, but also like fun stuff that they might not have known unless they were in that organization. So the sports scores, posting every single score for every single sport after the game. You are probably, at most of them, you probably had a photographer there shooting it. And so you can post a picture or two, not maybe your best ones that might go in the yearbook, but like your second best ones that are still really good. Tag the person, give them a little one-liner highlight or just a sports score. You can put in Canva, you can design like a template and then use the same template every single day, like every single sports score, make a different one for football, a different one for soccer, everything. And then you just already have it good to go. You pop the picture in, you change the score, win or loss, and then you export it and post it. Like, it's super, super fast and easy. And that's going to be something that the athletic community really appreciates. Typically, they also have their own accounts. But if you can have it be like a one-stop shop, people are more likely to follow you, especially parents. And really, you're marketing to parents. You're marketing to particularly the moms, but students aren't buying their own yearbooks. Their parents are. So you want to market really to them. And then there's just a big long list of all these types of things that you can post on that social media account to add value first. And once you've done that, and you're doing that all day, every day, I'm talking like you're posting on stories, you're making reels, you're doing Instagram posts, you might be on Twitter. Like, don't feel like you have to be on every platform. Definitely, I would say pick one or two to really focus on. TikTok is super popular right now. If your students are into it, like, lean into that. It's so fun, and they can make some really viral content really quickly and easily sometimes. And then you can post that on Instagram as well. I will say that also parents are on Facebook though. And so if you're hesitant to do Facebook because your kids aren't on Facebook, the reality is that your parents are. And so it might be beneficial, and this would take some commitment, but to create a Facebook group for news in your school community, and that way parents can join it, and then they can get that information, and then you also use that as a platform to market the yearbook, because you want to be posting all this stuff a lot, and then you want to throw in the sales stuff every now and then, because you don't want it to just be like, hey, don't forget to buy your yearbook. Buy your yearbook. Also, did you buy your yearbook? Also, don't forget, deadline's coming up to buy your yearbook. Because again, it blends into the landscape, and people don't want to be sold to like that. They want to just be reminded of things, not just sold to. So let's take a look at some examples of some really good social media posts that students and yearbook staffs created. So this one on the left was a photo that was taken, I think, at like a pep rally or a game. And this person, this is a coach, I would assume, is making this silly face. And so they used that face to make a meme out of it, obviously got permission. And says, that feeling when you realize you forgot to order a yearbook. And he's like, dang it. So that's just funny. And hopefully he's like a beloved coach and he, like thought that was so funny. And like, it's just, again, it's not necessarily this post that's going to get people to go to balfour.com and buy the yearbook, but it's going to get them interested in like the content. Then they're going to follow. Then a couple weeks later, you might post about the yearbook sales and they'll be like, okay, yeah, I need to buy it. Same thing with the other two. These are a little bit more intentional, but using those personalities you have in your campus, those are basically influencers. And so using those popular teachers, funny teachers, anybody that like has some sort of unique personality, really leveraging that and getting them on board to promote your yearbook with you, is going to be a lot more effective than just your, maybe 20 yearbook staff members and yourself, doing it, because the school community is so much wider than that, and you really want to leverage those relationships that those teachers have with their students. It's cute. All right, here's some more. So again, another coach, but when you realize the yearbooks are almost sold out and you don't have one, so that's such a good picture too. Like I love how like depth of field that is, but super good. And then that feeling when you order your yearbook, she's so excited. And then librarians don't judge books by their covers unless it's the RHS 2020 yearbook. So really good job on these posts here. Like just fun, creative, but also super simple. Picture background, text on top. Like that's super, super easy. Here's some examples of what I was talking about earlier with the scoreboard. And so this is that like big marquee at a sports stadium. Everyone's looking at that board already for their sports scores and for the updates. And why not make sure that your advertisement for your yearbook is up there? In particular, I really like this purple one up here in the corner where I am. Let me move myself. And it says homecoming dress, dance tickets, mom and garter, yearbook. And it's unchecked. So cute. I think I did a really good job with that one. Okay. And then McCallum did a really cool idea, and countdowns are really popular. People do countdowns all the time about numbers, 10 days left till deadline, and then you do 9, 8, 7, 6, whatever. Or you do number of days left to buy a yearbook, that sort of thing. But they actually put a different spin on theirs, and I thought it was really interesting. And they did posters, but they put on there how many yearbooks are left. And so it really built that sense of urgency that, 133 sounds like a big number, but then it starts to come down. And you're like, oh, these are actually really selling fast. And so here's them putting it up, and then it goes down to 105, and they decorated them so cute. And then it goes down to 78, 65. And so there's no like rhyme or reason. It's like when they bring it down, it's probably like daily maybe. And so whatever that number ends up being, there we go, 25. You went from 65 to 25. That's a huge jump. And so that sense of urgency is really growing. I thought that was a really interesting take on a countdown and really creative. Okay, then throughout the year as well, and this is more so of that like give value, give them, they need 7 touches to know what journalism does and the quality of the publications and what they're buying and all of that. And that's like put yourself out there. Like if you have awards or you have recognition or you have certificates or anything that you can display, go ahead and do that. Get a trophy case if you can, or a spot on the, somewhere in the library. This is the Glacier Peak one here. The second one is in the journalism classroom, I think, and they stacked up all their books that they've had throughout the past couple of years. And it highlights exactly what the product is. And so even if you're, not familiar with this school, and maybe you're new to the school, you don't know what their yearbook is, you don't know if the yearbook's cool, you have a bunch of them to look through right here and see right off the bat. And then this one in the bottom I think is really cute too. This is like Meet the Press, and they put their Bitmojis up there. It's so cute. And it's on a bulletin board in the hallway so people can get to know who is making the yearbook, and it's just a fun way to introduce your staff to the rest of the school. All right, so we talked about e-marketing a little bit. So here's some examples. This is from Vista Ridge High School, and the left one is talking about that John's photo is featured in the yearbook. So it's using that coverage tracking feature as well as who is purchased. And so you're filtering it by someone who's in the yearbook but hasn't purchased yet. And then the next one is senior parents in particular. So this is about, don't forget, buy your yearbook, but also reserve your student ad space. And then you can see your other campaigns in the back end of Balfour's like sell it e-marketing section. And so you can reuse stuff. You can, plan out your marketing campaigns through here. Um, Another thing that you want to post on your channels, just as that like extra filler content, is your progress of your book. People want to see what's behind the scenes. Behind the scenes content is always like so juicy. People love to watch it. And so showing things like the progress being made, the late nights you're working at, the index that you're doing on a weekend before deadline, you're crossing things off. People don't understand at all what goes into a yearbook, and giving them that behind the scenes insight makes them feel like they were a part of it, makes them feel like they got to witness like details that normally you wouldn't see, and then they're bought into that process, and they obviously want the final copy to see how this behind the scenes footage and content like ended up at the end. Just some more examples of behind the scenes, showing all your equipment. Like people are really into like the mess of the equipment behind the scenes. Like people want to see like, oh my gosh, like you do all that, you know how to use all that, like that's cool. And then this is just a really good picture too of the photographers on the sidelines doing their job, doing what they do best. Okay, and then we talked about some seasonal ways to promote your yearbook. This is cutie little Olaf saying, "Do you want to buy a yearbook? Like, do you want to build a snowman?" So cute. And so they just created this out of like poster paper or butcher paper or whatever. And then we talked about the candies. So this would be like at Thanksgiving, at Halloween, and at um, Valentine's Day. And then the door also is decorated. Like we'd love to see you buy a yearbook is also a Valentine's Day um, option. And it's just super easy, super cheap to be able to celebrate people that bought their yearbooks. And it's subtle. It's one piece of candy that they're getting. It's one Jolly Rancher that they're getting in class, but it's one more Jolly Rancher than their neighbor has. And it just brings up again, it's not so much about the Jolly Rancher. It's about bringing up as a tiny little interruption in their day. Oh, thanks for buying your yearbook. So that's puts another touch in the person that hasn't purchased head and say, oh, I need to buy the yearbook too. So take some time to think about what you want to do for your marketing campaigns for the year. Don't overcommit and try and do too much, but you want to make sure that you are getting in front of your student body and reminding them of there's a yearbook several times throughout the year in several different methods. So what I recommend, like I said, is map out a calendar for the entire year. Like have it be a day where your staff sits down and decides like, here's when we're going to do what. You can also leverage National Yearbook Week, which is in October, and there's a lot of ideas that publishers give you in order to promote your book as well. And so you really want to be intentional with it. Don't let it be an afterthought, because if it is an afterthought for your staff and for you, it's going to be an afterthought for your student body as well. And you're just not going to sell as many yearbooks. And then you put all this work into it, and you probably could have sold more and made more people see it. So if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me. My email is Katie, Katie at organizedadvisor with an ER.com. Or you can go to organizedadvisor.com, hit the contact button, and the form goes straight to my inbox. So I'm happy to help if you guys need anything at all throughout the year. Otherwise, I'll see you around, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.